David, welcome to the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I know we were just sort of talking off air there for a second there, but when I looked at your profile and our team was sort of checking you out before we invited you, I saw your background in gaming, and I have to say I got a little bit excited. As somebody who currently subscribes to the PlayStation Network and all these other things, I thought, yes, this is a man I think I'll have a bit in common with.
Yeah, no, the game industry is just the best. Whenever I started, there were just so few people in the space. And so every time I'd meet someone, it's like, oh, I've never met someone from the game industry before. And it's totally different now. It's like so many, there's just about every university in the world has some kind of video game course for them. So I think it's great to see how it's been embraced. It's a real career. And, in a way, it's been most of my career. So I was in the game industry from black and white through color to 3D, right? So I got to watch a lot of changes. It's great.
It is awesome. And it's not just about playing games, right? I mean, this is big business these days. And I heard some interesting stats the other day that said the gaming industry is now bigger than the movie and music industry combined. And I thought that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's actually a little more complicated because the industry is so big because it actually is a combination of the hardware and the software. And so people do outlay and buy new consoles, and then they buy all the games to play. And now they're paying subscriptions on those devices, and they're also constantly getting teased into buying do you want the ultra deluxe or the ultra deluxe version of the game? And somehow those prices just keep going up and up and up. And then there's in-game items. Oh, do you want to get this upgrade and that? Do you like walking, or would you like to buy a horse? That kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of money spent in games, and I think, in a way, we keep increasing the size of the industry, getting more and more people to play. There's a lot of people that don't know they play video games. They're playing something, and they don't really think I'm a video game player, because they're playing solitaire or something like that. But they are actually playing video games. And the mission we were on really was to get everybody. So at some point, I think family gaming will become, more than it is today. And that sort of stuff, just the concept is to make games easier and balanced so grandpa can play the little kid. And how great would it be if grandpa is really dangerous in this game, right? Because he's got a shot. And that's sort of intelligent auto balancing that the games need to, like, if you're playing Pong and grandpa keeps losing, his bat gets bigger and bigger until it works out. And suddenly, grandpa's on your case, right? And that's a kind of a fun idea. So I think the game industry still has lots of room left to go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, I can certainly vouch for the fact that as a busy guy, when I'm playing Red Dead with my kids and it says, hey, wouldn't you like to just spend a few bucks and you can have some better guns and better horses and better things and you can catch up to the kids? I'm like, for a few bucks to help take a couple of extra shots there, I'm in, right? Like I don't have time to build my character, so I definitely get that. And it's funny you talk about family engagement too, because even at a very, very basic level, my entire family is playing Wordle, and everybody's sharing their results on a WhatsApp group, right? And so, in a sense, we're still all playing together.
Yeah, and they don't think they're gamers. Usually, the Wordle players. There's another one, Scrabble with Friends, that people play. And again, my mother's playing that, and she's 80, and she thinks it's the best thing ever. So I don't think we'll ever get her on Call of Duty or Mortal Kombat, but I think Wordle and those kind of things, it gives so much entertainment. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, I'm still holding out hope. My sons are working on my wife to get her to come and play Fortnite. But we recently bought a steering wheel and pedal rig to play Formula One. And literally my wife, after watching it set up for a couple of weeks, she came by me the other day and said, I think I actually want to have a go at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So slowly we're trying to find the little weak spots where we can get in there and convince her to come and play. So I'm convinced we'll get there in the end.
Yeah, that happened. My dad watched me making games for years, and he really wasn't that interested in playing games. And then one day he walked by and he goes, that sounds like a real soccer game. And I go, yeah, they take recorders to the stadium and it's actually the sounds. And he's like, that looks like a real soccer game, because he's looking at the players and I'm like, yeah, they actually scan the players and they take pictures and they try to get as close as possible to the real people. And he's like, can I have a go? And that was the first time ever, right? Here's the controller. It turned out a little too hard for him, like too much to, press these 2 buttons to slide and these 2 buttons to tackle and these, and it really just needed to be, like FIFA has their 2-button mode now. I wish they just had it really, really simple for him, but ultimately it was, I think the games at some point draw people in, and that's a great thing when something they love or they're into. They like snowboarding, and then there's a snowboarding game that they can actually play. Then suddenly they're actually interested in experiencing that. So at some point we'll get them all. That's the goal. We'll get them all.
Yeah, that's cool. So at the risk of asking a really obvious question, I mean, how did you get into this space? And was there a particular point where you kind of knew the gaming industry was your career, your business life?
Yeah, the way it works, I grew up in Northern Ireland, and it's very simple there. There's almost a requirement from your family that you can be whoever you want to be and do anything that you want to do in life, as long as you become a doctor or an attorney first. If you become a doctor or a lawyer first, they're happy. And that wasn't really that interesting to me. And I wanted to be a pilot. And so what I wanted was to fly Concorde, because Concorde was the supersonic jet that British Airways had that was so incredible, and I really wanted to be a pilot for that thing. And I was studying pilots books and all the rest of it. What you can't tell looking at my video is that I'm 6'8" tall. And so my mother was working for British Airways, and she got me the chance to sit in the cockpit. And when you're 6'8", you can't sit in the cockpit. So it destroyed my dreams. Like whoever designed Concorde, thanks a lot. And so it was awful and super depressing walking back down those stairs.
Oh man, maybe you should have taken a photo though and shared it with the all the passengers in economy class, right? Say, hey, it's not just you, right? It's the pilots too.
It is the pilots too. So gaming came along by accident. So I we have a joke in Ireland that it only rained twice this week, once for 3 days and once for 4 days. And and so doing anything indoors is a good idea. And I started making very simple video games on the Sinclair ZX81. And that thing was so basic. It was just like little black blobs and beeps, and so there was no artist required, no music required, and I just started making games on it. I mean, some of the games you'd literally be the letter A because it looks like it has legs on it, but by making those games, I didn't realize you could actually make money from the game industry. And so I was getting published in magazines, and ultimately I did games and books, and I was getting these checks, and the checks allowed me to buy unlimited amounts of candy, which got me very excited. And and then I'm like, well, damn, I mean, I could do this all night. And so that's what I did. I'd just be typing and typing and typing. And suddenly, I was in the game industry. But the problem is that Northern Ireland was not the epicenter of the video game world. And so I thought it was England. So I ended up getting a job offer to move to London, and I started working there. And clearly it was, there was more going on than there was at the time in Belfast. But the real opportunity was in California. And so I realized quite a big thing, and this would be, a business thing that I think I learned at the time, which I learned really quickly, was branding matters. So, if I make a game called Jumpy Boy, no one cares. But when you make the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you have a #1 hit on your hands. And so I was given the rights to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when I was in England, and the game went straight to #1. And that sort of changed my career overnight. Suddenly, people want to work with you. And so then I go back to making other games that I want to make. And then you realize, making these license games makes a real difference. So I ended up getting the Terminator from James Cameron's company. And the Terminator was incredible. And, again, everyone was super interested. And then I ended up moving to America because the company that was publishing it was Virgin Games, Richard Branson's company. He actually had a video game component, and they made me a hard to refuse offer. Imagine you're sitting in your house in the suburbs of England, thinking to yourself, is this the way the story ends, right? I'm in this little place by a train station in England going, is this it? Or is there going to be any more? And then you get a call saying, David, we want you to come to America, get on a plane. We'll cover everything, whatever, we'll get you an apartment, a car, we'll pay you royalties, whatever you make, we'll pay you more. Come to California. So by getting on the plane, it was so great because it was like a whole new adventure. It's like, a real interactive adventure. And I arrived in America, and they had us make a game for McDonald's. And McDonald's wanted a video game, but they didn't quite know what they wanted. So we just went ahead and made a game that we thought was really cool. And they hated it. So the McDonald's executives were like, what is this? Where's Ronald McDonald? And we're like, no, nobody likes Ronald McDonald. So it turned into this whole thing. And we ended up publishing the game anyway. And it won Game of the Year, Graphics of the Year, Audio of the Year. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so that left me in a weird position. What do you do? Do you stay in America? Do you go back to England? And they said, would you like to continue? We'd like you to make the game Aladdin for Disney. And
oh, wow.
And Aladdin was for me a career changer because Disney. This was in the days of Jeffrey Katzenberg when he was running the studios, and this guy basically just said, "What do you need? Like, what does your team need to make this awesome?" And the answer was, can we have Disney feature animation in Florida hand draw every animation for us? The people who do Aladdin. And they said, sure. What else do you need? Wait, what?
No brainer.
I mean, you know how much each drawing costs, at Disney, like they sell all those cells. But they did it. And the result was very unfair for animators in the video game industry because we had Disney in our corner and the game obviously did very well. And so that was really, you can see how the path goes, right? Then we're like, well, we'll go make some of our own games, which do fine, like they do fine, but they're not, you don't get I find with branding, when kids walk in a store and they see something they recognize, it's like magnetically pulls their hand towards it. And so if you have the Stranger Things game, that's amazing. If you have the, I don't know, Strange Thing game, no one cares, right? You just get no interest. But that's what happens, is that the hands reach out and they buy those products. And so the last one I did that I would say was notable was probably The Matrix. I had been asked by the directors to come and meet, and at the time we were very busy, so we had multiple projects in play, and they sent me this script and said, there's this new movie starring Keanu Reeves, and at the time I didn't really know what The Matrix was. You know, that whole you have to work out what The Matrix is. I don't know what The Matrix is. And so I went and met with them, and they showed me this animation of a burning fire with a camera that went around it, and I just didn't see that was going to be, Keanu bending over backwards and avoiding bullets. I didn't put two and two together. But the net was I turned it down, and so that was probably the worst decision of my entire career. And you can just imagine, I then go and see The Matrix with my wife in the theater. And she's like, you turned this down? What's wrong with you? And I know. And I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. This movie's incredible. And it was the worst, stupidest thing. But anyway, then I get a call from Joel Silver's office, who produced the movie. And they say, look, we're going to do another one, and it's going to be called Matrix Reloaded. Would you like to work with us on the second one? And you can just imagine what happened then. I got almost got a speeding ticket driving to his office, so I could get my hands on this thing. And if anything, that was peak Matrix. So it was almost better because that's when the excitement was at its peak. People were so excited to see more of that universe. And that's when we made our game. And what happened was that the directors actually made an hour of extra footage for our game. And in the video game industry, you can't afford to make an hour of Matrix level, Hollywood level footage like that. You just don't do it. And so for them to the directors to decide, no, we're going to do that and just give it to you as part of the package, was incredible. And so that was a great experience. And then we went back. So the problem was that they wanted to tell the story differently. So what they did is they made it so you could experience the movie and the game in different ways. So if I'm sitting in a movie theater, to my left is somebody watching the movie, but I've played the video game. There's a part where Morpheus falls off a truck. He's fighting an agent on a truck on the freeway, and he falls off onto the hood of a car. If for this person in the theater, I guess the car was there. For me, I got the car there. Getting that car there was a nightmare, but I saved Morpheus, right? And that's an interesting idea. I like the idea of giving gamers a different movie experience than just a normal movie viewer. And that was really the concept behind that game. But the problem was you didn't play as Neo, and this was something that the gamers weren't thrilled about. They're like, we'd like to be Neo, please. So we did a second game called The Path of Neo, and on that one you actually got to play him, and then all was well. But that was kind of a fun. You wouldn't believe the stuff that happens when you make a video game like that. I got a call. Michael Jackson would like to play The Matrix before you launch it. Would you be willing to do that? And I'm like, of course. And then they're like, well, he's in Neverland. Can you drive up like right now? And so you go, I'm on my way.
Yeah, another speeding ticket.
Yeah, so that was fascinating. He ended up, I spent quite a bit of time with him, and he ended up saying, let's make a game together. And because he had his own idea for his own video game. And that's really that's where the game industry, I think, is interesting, because every celebrity, every sports star, the CEO of just about every major company has at this point grown up and with video games, and they understand how important it is, or they have kids and they understand, they watch their kids play and they realize this is a real thing I need to take seriously. So, and there's lots of life lessons from games too, to do with how to get people, how to entertain people, how to keep people entertained, to get them to stick to play and don't get up and leave, get them to actually really, really enjoy it. And I even wrote a book at one point on game design. It's out of print now, but you can probably get it on eBay. But that book was basically designed to try to help designers understand what is causing that. And now that I'm more in the business world, I'm sort of thinking, how can I use these things that we've learned to create higher engagement for customers?
Yeah, that's fascinating, David. I mean, I just love it. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for so many of these discussions. It just would have been amazing. And I think when you've seen some of these games too, it just makes it that much more real. I'm curious. We're talking about skills that are learned and things like that. I mean, one of the things that I certainly see, and I see it with my own kids now, and I jump on, play PlayStation with my kids and do all that sort of stuff, is that games can teach you some real world skills beyond eye-hand coordination. It's some real problem solving things in games, right? And I guess the good part about it is that, okay, I failed, I didn't die, and I didn't lose a whole bunch of money. It's not like I went and invested my life savings in a business that just failed. There's small micro lessons that can be learned, which I find fascinating. We start to see, in my mind anyway, the idea of video games or gamification being a much broader tool for society. I don't know. Have you got any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I narrowed it down. What makes a good video game? I narrowed it down to three things, which is skill, risk, and strategy. if all three have to be present all the time for you to stay engaged. Skill means that while you're playing something, you get better. And imagine every time you play, you get worse. It wouldn't take long for you to go, I'm done. Or imagine the game kind of cheats a bit and just kills you randomly. Like a bullet comes flying out of nowhere and just kills you. That's not fun. So ultimately, skill means I should feel like I'm growing while playing this game. And then risk is like very much why casinos exist in this world is, the more risk, the more reward. It really works in games too. So if I make a run for it and I survive, I feel really good about it. Or if I make it to that ammo box that I'm trying to get to, and now it's payback time because I made it, is really quite thrilling. And so risk is good. And then the third one is strategy. Strategy is actually, I think, more important than ever because there's a thing that some game designers do where they want you to just play their story and nothing else. Meaning that door's locked because I don't want you to look in that room. And I don't want, in fact, you can't you can't do anything. You have to just follow my path, and it's called a game that's on rails. And if you're on rails, it's kind of like you're going to Universal Studios or Disneyland and you're sitting in a little tram and they're showing you the park, but you can't go explore it. That's to me, that's not the idea of what video games really should be. And so I think it's important that you're able to get out there and try things. So as you do that, then you get the chance to invoke strategy. And strategy means I tried this, didn't work, tried this, didn't work, but I got more ideas. If there is no room for ideas, then because you're on rails, then strategy just dies, and the overall, you start blaming the game for things, and et cetera, et cetera. If you can, I think one of the great examples is the game Tetris, because it's so simple. What worked so well, it's one of the most played video games in history, and when you make a mistake, you're like, oh, and it all falls apart, and you immediately go, oh, I'm going to do it differently next time, and you start. You come up with I'm going to start pushing everything to the right. I'm going to do everything to the left, or you come up with some other strategy, and then you try again, and that makes it really fun. So I think these things in real life really matter as well. If you want people to feel engaged with the thing that you're creating, but the other thing which I'm realizing now is just how impatient everybody's becoming, and so. It's quite shocking. And I say that, do you think people are going to get, are they going to get more patient or less patient? And, if they get less patient, and the patience level gets insane, what are we going to get it down to, like a second? And I swear it's getting there. I actually watch kids using TikTok, and you can see there's just this. It entertained me now. It's been 3 seconds. You better get on with it. And they get actually annoyed if the joke arrives at 30 seconds or something, because it's just far too long. You're torturing them at that point. So this is the real world. This is the world that we're in now. And I don't think it's going to go the opposite direction and start going back to, it's a bit like when we had the internet, we could type blogs. And then Twitter came along and said, please don't type blogs, just keep it really brief. And then you wonder why that worked. Well, because they made it easier. And I think, and then Instagram really focused on photos, but I think the idea of video is much more engaging. So video is the way to go, but keep it really brief. And so this is all part of the stuff you have to pay attention to, because if fighting it is a real mistake. Like, hey, I'm just going to write this big long article and have everyone come and I'm going to get them to move on the internet, like leave TikTok and come to my website and read this big long boring article that I wrote. That's not a good strategy in 2022, 2023. And so I think it's kind of fun to see how fast things continue to evolve. And I think gaming's the same. I don't think gaming has at all reached its peak yet. I still think there's huge opportunity for growth there.
Yeah. Oh, look, I totally agree. I think the target market's much bigger. As you say, we've all kind of now grown up with these things, but so the audience is bigger, but the application of gaming, I think, is so much broader too. That whole attention thing you talked about there. It's funny. I obviously don't want to go into a big, deep political debate here, but I think we've seen it over the last however many years now. Like people's desire to have a short answer for everything is actually undermining some of our broader society and political system. I think even it's there are actually one of my favorite quotes is George Bernard Shaw said, "For every complex problem, there's a simple answer that's wrong," and I think
I love that.
Too often we're going for the simple answer, and it's why you see so many people coming out, and as long as they say it with confidence, well, it must be real, right? Oh, well, the answer's this. Well, actually, you're talking about a multidimensional problem that's super layered with other complex issues, and there is no actual right answer. It's going to be the best of a bunch of wrong answers, really. That's probably the solution we have to take with stuff. But anyway, I don't want to digress too much down that path, but I am curious about how we can use gaming in a really positive way. And one of the things I'm seeing a little bit, and it's still a little bit tinky and kind of cheesy in some ways, but this idea of using gamification in our regular businesses. And I'll give you an example. Like I noticed with our CRM when we first subscribed to it, they're doing stuff like, animations and stuff when you win a deal or something positive happens. And it's like, yeah, okay. I see where you're going here. Okay, well, now we're going to track the salespeople. We back in my old days of doing sales, we had a whiteboard, right? And they put results up, and it was an analog way of us gamifying our work and having some sense of competition. And of course, we can lean on tech now for all of that stuff. But are you seeing much more of the traditional business world starting to use using technology and these techniques to try to further their business, improve productivity, all that sort of good stuff?
Yeah, I'm seeing all kinds of versions of that. So there's some people that will say they'll come and help you with gamification, but that it turns out that they will just talk a lot of babble, and they don't really have a history of making games. So that this is just some theories they have. It's not real.
Yeah.
Then I've seen some very basic ideas. I was at a testing, well, it wasn't testing, it was support. So Microsoft and Electronic Arts and people use a company to do support. And it turns out that the support people are looking while they're on the phone. They're looking at a big screen, like a projected image of a track. And around the track are their gifts like iPads and all that kind of stuff. And as they're handling the calls, they're seeing who gets to the iPad next. And that's that can be evil, because that means now they won't eat lunch and they can't pee, right? Because they're almost there, and that's how games can be used for evil, right there. But overall, I think there is interesting psychology in it, which you have to be careful with. Is if you imagine the game keeps telling you, or the thing that you've invented keeps trying to pat you on the head, it starts to feel fake, right? You don't really deserve that. It's like saying, here you go, here's another certificate, and here's another certificate, and here's another certificate, and confetti, and you're like, but I didn't really do very much here. That's very interesting, is the reward has to be commensurate to what you did, and it has to be real, because then it means something to you, right? So because then you deserve it in a way, and it's like, oh, you revel in it a little bit more, because that was hard, and now you've seen the payoff for it, and you know that not many people are going to get to see that. But if everyone's seeing that, that's not so exciting. And so you can see there's an interesting balance there in how to reward gamers or whoever's using the software in some very real way, because then it's so meaningful. They'll put a picture on their wall of them, with that thing that just occurred, because it's something that they want to remember. That's where it gets interesting, I think. So trying to find those kind of balances, and if you can get that right, then that's obviously like a nuclear bomb. You'll get really, really high engagement, and people will get addicted to whatever it is you're doing. You see it in certain games. There's a game I play, Clash Royale, on the iPhone. This thing makes billions and billions of dollars. And you go, but hold on, it's just an iPhone app game. And I probably personally have maybe put about $1,000 into it. And I can't believe it. I just don't understand. I literally am like, this is insane. I keep putting more money in. The balancing is just so well done that if you need to save time and you just want to get on with it, then spending the money is worth it. It's become for me a little bit of a running joke when I talk to game designers. I say to them, of all the things you're selling in your game, I'll bet you that the top selling is the thing that saves the most time, and they'll just nod because that's what people are willing to pay for. And that's when you see the wallets come out, is when you're going to save time. And so that analogy of do you want to walk or do you want to ride is a really good one because, yes, you can walk, but riding is way, way faster. And where are games going? Well, the kind of thing I was getting interested in was the idea that you would start to create interest. So today, the idea is that you would buy products for yourself. Like I'm going to get this suit of armor, or this horse, or this car, or whatever. But the concept of you being able to share those with other people, I thought was getting very interesting. And I started giving speeches about that. But the idea, they had examples where in China, you would have some girl who's a real estate agent by day, princess by night. And at night, because she had lots of money, she would have a whole sort of army literally going, are you logging in? Are you logging in? Because when she's there, they're all riding her horses and wearing her armor. And so if you can imagine, she's able to assemble a militia of her own that will travel with her. And that kind of stuff might sound crazy, but you can imagine that becomes quite powerful. What are you going to do? Sit in your apartment alone after a day of selling real estate? Or do you want to be a princess with a whole army waiting to work with you? And so I think games have a lot of these to me are the sort of nuggets that start to open up whole new spaces and ideas. I thought VR was the same, where if you're sitting in some really lame hotel room, and then you can put on a VR helmet and be somewhere else, that's pretty cool. I was once sitting in my bed, and I put on the VR headset, and I was at a rave, and there was lasers and confetti falling in the air, and the music was pumping, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And then I take off the headset, and I'm back in my bedroom, and I'm like, I'm going back to the rave. Right? And so you can see now, most people, I'd say, I have a thing which I call the restaurant test, which is, imagine you're sitting in a restaurant right now, and there's 100 people sitting around us. Look around the room and say how many of those people are going to be going to a rave in VR tonight, right?
Yeah.
How many? What would you guess? Probably zero, right? And that's the problem.
At the moment, yeah.
That's one way to just sort of give you a really quick gauge on is this a thing? How many of those people will use Amazon for shopping tonight? Quite a few. How many of those people will use Netflix? Quite a few. But how many are going to go into VR and do something like that? Probably quite a small amount. So, but these are the kind of things that I'm hoping will grow as people start to understand the potential of that. So if a father and a son are separated, and the father's in London and the son is in America, for example, in Australia, and they're able to put on their helmets and now be in a fighter together, flying an airplane together, I think that's actually pretty cool. And so, having shared experiences across impossible distances is the kind of stuff that again, the game industry can obviously generate. And I think they'll understand how to make it fun for those people. They do have fishing and things like that today, so you can go fishing and stand beside your father somewhere else, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think that it's there's a lot of this is where I keep going with the game industry, is somehow it's always at its infancy. It's just getting started. It's 40, 50 years in at this point, and it's still just getting started. And and so people are like, oh, it makes a lot of money, but it's not even close to done yet. There's just so much more. And I think in a way, gaming is really good value for money. If you think about the cost of a movie or something like that, and the thousands of hours that you can get out of a really good game. So, I think it's an interesting form of entertainment for sure.
Yeah, and I think the market supports what you're saying there, right? I mean, I'll go back to my own example for a minute, but okay, I love my games, but during COVID and during lockdown, that I think most countries had, we all felt that sense of isolation. But to be honest, gaming, as my other mates would attest to, just absolutely saved us through that period. Because I would go upstairs and yes, I would go and take my little glass of whiskey and I would sit down and have a log on and put aside whatever game it was. Typically we're in a free world kind of running around sort of space, but me and three mates would join our little posse together and we'd get online and start chatting. And whether you're sitting around a virtual campfire or you're riding your horses, driving a car, whatever you're doing, we were in the moment together. And you quickly moved past the fact that you're looking at a screen. I mean, of course, we all talked about VR being the ultimate place that we will land. Personally, I'm waiting for the next version to come out, but that will take it to that next level, right? And sharing that common experience, having those conversations felt real. In fact, I could tell you, I mean, the amount of nights with I was in tears laughing about the stupid things we're doing together, right? Like it wasn't necessarily always completing a mission. Sometimes it was just doing silly stuff, hanging out. It was virtually hanging out. And I thought that's got massive application beyond just playing a game, trying to complete a goal or whatever it might be from a social perspective in our society.
Yeah, and it removes all the walls. So you can be in different countries, you can be anywhere at any time and just jump in and join your friends. That's a pretty compelling concept, I think. And if anything, that the problem is it starts to become quite addictive, right? You want to be there more than where you are right now. That's the interesting twist to that situation.
Yeah.
But no, I think the game industry is going to continue, I think, to keep enhancing those kind of experiences. And AI is coming at 1,000 miles an hour, and AI is going to, that's going to change things too. I've always said, I'll give you a crazy story. I used to do a lot of game industry speeches, and one of them that I used to show a picture I took from a popular science magazine, and it was a row of chainsaws. And I said, have you ever looked at the chainsaw industry? I mean, this is embarrassing at this point. They're all exactly the same. I mean, they're not. Everyone's just copying each other and just changing the plastic color, or or put a different logo on the same thing. But they're all the same. And so there's this row of different brands, and I'm like, they're all the same. And then I was like, is the video game industry getting like that? And so I started to look at screenshots of first-person shooters, and I would say to the press, can you tell me which first-person shooter this is? And they'd be like, I don't know. And what about this one? I don't know. What about this one? Don't know. And then I was like, well, let me do it with soccer games. And I started pulling up the soccer games, and it was the same thing. It was all starting to get similar because we're closing in on reality. And as we get closer to reality, the stuff all starts to look the same, and that's terrible. And so for me, there's this moment when you push through that into unlocked creativity, creating new worlds, where the job isn't just to sort of simulate what we've currently got, but it's that James Cameron thing where James Cameron can just say, let's just go to another world. We're going to go hunt aliens today, but we're going to go and do it in a whole new way, or we're going to do it, in Avatar is another example. And so I think there's a really interesting challenge coming for game designers is, can you take this from just copying the real world into taking us somewhere we've never been before? And of course, some game designers already do this. But I think as the hardware and the 3D gets better and better and better, and the characters get more real, and then you add AI, because the thing I've been asking for years is speech cognition, which is when you can speak and the characters can understand what you're saying. I think that's going to be so that so you can speak to them, and then speech generation where they can actually speak back to you. Some of the games, and you'll I'm sure agree, you've seen some games where you walk into town and someone says, "Welcome to town, traveler," and then you just shoot everyone in town, and then they're like, "Welcome to town, traveler," right? It's completely stupid, right? There's some really dumb characters in games, and that has to change. And so what it does is it allows you to start thinking about, you know, what it means to enter into a space where people understand what's going on. So all the NPCs are smart, and there's rumors, and they've heard of you, and you know you're notorious for something, and people are reacting correctly. You know, and they'll be much harder because the games will actually be playing against you versus just how many games have you played where there's someone hiding behind a box just waiting and they're not allowed to move? They've been placed there, right? That will change. And so with voice control, you'll be able to manage a lot of different people at once. Another thing that's coming is eye tracking. Eye tracking is something that I think is exciting for games, because I've done tests with it, and when you can look at something and fire, for example, or react, the speed at which your eyes move is way better than move the cursor up, move the cursor to the right, you know, that kind of stuff. It doesn't work. You need to be able to move at about the same speed as your brain can handle it. And our speech and our eyes are really fast. And so you'll see, you know, at coordinating a lot of people, instead of having to draw a circle around all the people you want to do something, you know, if you could just say it and then they do it. You can imagine now you're a commander and you've got a whole bunch of people following your instructions. These kind of things are going to be explored, I think, a lot more as the AI really kicks in. But I don't know if you've been following GPT-3 or DALL-E 2, but some of these technologies are just remarkable. DALL-E 2 can actually generate images that you've never seen before just based on describing them. So wow. You know, you could say Kermit eating an ice cream on the moon, and it'll just go, "Here you go," and it's phenomenal. Right? Yeah, you know, it can just do it. So this is all coming.
It's fascinating. I think, you know, I've always sort of believed, maybe I got this from Star Trek or something back in the day, but I've always believed that what we can imagine from a technological perspective, we will one day be able to build. And I think, you know, VR is probably, I don't know, I think 20 years behind where I thought it would be by now, to be honest, because I still remember back in the 90s putting a headset on. I was in a nightclub of all places doing this, you know, and the graphics weren't great, of course, but the concept was amazing, and you were instantly in this different space. And, you know, so I think there's probably, I don't know, I think there's maybe an acceleration happening here. But well, one of the things I was curious to ask you is just this crossover into the real world. I was involved in a little tech startup. They built some apps that was really the purpose of this app. It was all about gaming, and it was about sports gaming in particular. It was about how to bridge the gap between the real world, you know, going to a soccer game or a football game, whatever it might be, and being able to do things online and play, and it's live and it's interactive almost. And this particular app was about you know, you could pick certain players, and it's a bit like fantasy sports, but more evolved than that. And so what was happening on the field was impacting you in the game, and playing against other people and all the rest of it. And I think the most of the sports clubs that we met with loved the idea, because most of them really had no idea how to bridge the gap between reality and digital. And how to, they kind of knew broadly that this is something they needed to evolve, but didn't know how to do it. And so I'm curious, are you seeing much around this kind of, you know, how to bridge that gap, and how that can be possibly applied to other businesses outside of sport?
Yeah. It was like many, many years ago, I filed a patent for the idea that someday racing cars would have GPSs in them that could transmit directly to the game. So you could then be on the track with the people on TV. So you're watching, you know, a Formula One race on TV, and your car is in that race, and everyone's exactly where they are in the race, and you just have to see if you can beat them. Now, obviously, there's a problem here, and the problem, the elephant in the room, is the idea of you can't. If I swerve across someone's path in the game, they're not going to do it in the real world, and so this disconnect between the game, you know, you should be able to mess up the real world. Like if I'm playing football or soccer as in the UK. But if I'm playing soccer, I should be able to like trip somebody or something like that. And if it doesn't happen in the real world, then it's not real, if you know what I mean. So this is the this is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
this is the problem between bridging reality and the game. For complete freedom in the game, you want to be able to just play in the game. So ultimately, what we'd really like to see happen is there is, Formula One racing with enormous prizes and massive sponsorships and really rich gamers that play, because it's so fun to watch. But then we can start to offer things in the game that might not be possible in the real world. In the real world, they're constantly, changing the rules to try to stop people going too fast or too dangerous or too, they're going to kill some people. You don't have to have those limitations in the game. And so, in a way, the thing that's shocking to me, honestly, the thing that is the most shocking is just how we somehow have not been good at coming up with new sports. It's really quite surprising to me. If you think about it, like, what is a sport? It's a ball or a bat or something with some rules attached. Wouldn't we be great at that? In the game industry, can't we come up with those all day long? And no one's really. I mean, I'm not going to say no one because there's always an example somewhere, but it's. I'm waiting to find that Super Bowl style experience. I mean, you could argue it's Fortnite or something like that, but it's not. I don't really. I'm thinking there's probably a sport that could be something that bridges gaming, and you could maybe even do it to some extent in the real world too. But I'd like to see some new sports get invented. I mean, the closest thing we've seen is freaking Quidditch from Harry Potter. Right? That's probably the closest. I actually thought to myself when I was reading Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, good job. At least you give it a go, right? And there's people running around Google campuses on Quidditch fields playing with broomsticks. So they got it done. It actually turned into some sports that people play, but you can see the potential there. It'd be fun to see that happen someday.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Hey, I'm cognizant of time, but I'd like to shift gear if we can a little bit, and just I'm curious to know a little bit about some of the deals you've done in this space. It's obviously you've been very successful in the creation of games, but you have actually built some companies. You have exited very, very successfully, and I know one of those is Gaikai. Can we unpack that a little bit? I'd love to know a little bit more about that journey and the journey of the business and how you ultimately exited.
So what happened was I gave a speech actually at a conference. There's a thing called the DICE conference, and it's really, I think, one of the most interesting game industry conferences because it's quite small and very focused. And I gave a speech there about what I thought the future would have, which is games played from the cloud. And I tried to explain the limitations and problems and all the rest of it. And then I thought, well, damn, if I'm going to be presenting this, I'm going to patent it before I do it. So I patented it, and then I went ahead and gave the speech. And some engineers from the Netherlands reached out to me and said, actually, we're working on this idea of they were thinking of making arcade machines that you could play on any device. So streaming, very simple, like Space Invaders and things like that. But they had actually got some games working like Mario and stuff like that you could actually stream. And so you can imagine I'm in America going, wait, what? Like this is going to be really hard. Can I try this? And they sent me a link, and I was playing Mario Kart in the US from a server in the Netherlands. And you can imagine it was really slow and everything, but I'm like, oh my goodness, this is real. We can do this. So that I actually left the company I was with and started a company with these two guys, and we started building the technology. And that's part of the trick, I think, is to sort of look down the track in whatever industry you're in and say, where is this going and where do you think it's going to go? And I believe if everything is streaming, games have to stream. Like if all movies, music, books, audio, at some point I'm expecting games are going to join them. And so I ended up working with these guys, and we ended up building this technology from the ground up, which is, I built the first US servers on my dining room table. I drove up to just south of Los Angeles and put them into a rack, and off we go. And as we spread out across the US, it allowed us to start doing demonstrations of this capability. But at the end of the day, I can't see a future now where that won't be the best way to game. And it causes gamers to freak out if I say that out loud. So I apologize to all gamers listening. But let me tell you why. The reason is because today we buy consoles based upon what we can afford as a group. So the price of a console is set usually, let's call it $500, just as an example number. That then everything just has to be built to that spec, because a lot of people have to buy this console, and the cheaper the better. And yet you as a gamer, do you want the $500 experience or the $5,000 experience? If we put it in the cloud, it can be $5,000. And so that's the point. When games get made for the $5,000 version in the cloud, you will not be able to play those games at home. There's just no chance. In which case, I think it's really up to just waiting for that watershed moment when that game gets made. And I was talking to the head of Xbox. I was at a party and he was there, and I got really excited because they had at the time Flight Simulator was coming, and I was like, this is it. It's like a petabyte of data, right? Are you going to download a petabyte of data? No. So therefore, this is it. It's going to be Flight Simulator, and then out it comes. And the damn thing is, it got a huge download, a ridiculously large download. And there you are, you're downloading these maps to your PC. And so I know that I believe, I haven't played the streaming version, but I believe there is one. But ultimately, you can see these are the kind of experiences that not having to download anything, never having to update anything, always having the max deluxe everything in the game instantly is really what cloud gaming is going to deliver. And so we were building this company, and I was going around trying to raise money for it. And the people who understood gaming were like, take my money. The people who, like, a funny one was Intel Capital. We actually did a demonstration. I think I'm trying to remember which it was. It was either World of Warcraft or Call of Duty, but I think we may have shown them Call of Duty streaming in a browser from the cloud. And I'm sitting there going, oh, they're going to be blown away by this. And it was a bunch of older people, and they were kind of like, it's just a game. What the hell, And we're like, this is Call of Duty running from the cloud. This is in a web browser, right? And they just weren't that impressed. And then I showed them PowerPoint, the real PowerPoint, not Google Slides. Actual PowerPoint running from servers in the cloud, and they just couldn't believe it. They were so blown away by that. They were like, this is going to change everything. And so I thought that was hilarious, and they invested. And so this is really this is just the process you go through when you meet different investors. They all have different things. One thing I like to remind everybody is that investors aren't actually, their goal isn't to take any risk with investing. So just to be very clear on that, they're not, their job, a lot of people think investors just, just take bets everywhere and just throw money around and see what happens. It's incredible. And that's exactly the opposite of what investors do. It's their job to protect money and make money. And so that's the important piece of it, is whatever you're going to present to them, you want to make it so it's as close to risk-free as possible. The analogy I use, I was once at a conference on a panel with a bunch of investors, and I said to them, I know what you guys want. And they were like, what's that? And I said, what you want us to do, it's like the gold industry. You want us to do the prospecting and find the gold seam in the ground and be certain we found it. And then you bring in the heavy machinery and come and pull that gold out of the ground. And that's actually, they all nodded. That's exactly what investors want to do, is they want you to do the work of going and finding the gold, and then they'll help you get that gold out of the ground. And before anyone else even knows there was gold there. That's the business they're in. And so that helps a lot when you're thinking about, presenting to investors and whatever you're going to be building. And in this case, cloud gaming suddenly became cloud everything. We could do Photoshop. We did a deal with Adobe to stream Photoshop So you could literally on adobe.com just be using Photoshop instantly. And things like that. In the future, it's going to be when what's going to happen in the future is you're going to see, you're watching a YouTube video of a new game and you click a button, you're in the game. You don't leave YouTube. You're still in the same browser. You'll see it everywhere. At some point, it'll be in the search results. That was something we fought hard for. Was I search for something and then there it is, and now I'm playing it instantly. That's where it's going, and that's going to be really great for people who know games, because they're going to say, "Oh, let's check out such and such," and be able to just search for it and play it instantly. Is going to be a pretty phenomenal thing. But it's still not quite there. I think PlayStation Now is probably the best example of this service, and that's what we ended up. We got acquired by PlayStation, and a funny story there is our company was called Gaikai, which is a Japanese word, and I thought that was pretty much a terrible name because everyone pronounces it wrong, and my partner, one of my co-founders, was just in love with it. So it wasn't negotiable. He loved it. And we ended up naming everything in the company with a Japanese name. So all our servers, all of that kind of stuff. And then along comes a Japanese company and buys us. And they think we did it. They love that they found a company that really cares about their culture. And isn't that interesting? I mean, I remember at the time just kind of laughing, just going, can you believe this? This is, how fortunate are we that we chose to go that path? And so ultimately that turned out to be really good. And Sony acquired us for just shy of $400 million, which was at the time a good deal. Strategically for us, it was really important to get the PlayStation library. So I think the PlayStation game library is incredible. Microsoft at the time was very much interested in what they were going to do in cloud gaming, and they hadn't quite got their path clear. And I don't think Nintendo was interested at all. They have just no interest in this. They were still at the time working hard on building their own digital store and getting that fully going. So this whole cloud gaming thing just wasn't. I talked to them; they just weren't interested. And so net, PlayStation have ended up building a pretty incredible service, and they have an enormous amount of games available now that can stream. And so that's an interesting point, is when your company gets acquired, it's quite common that the acquirer doesn't do a great job, and that, you see this all the time, companies getting acquired and then everyone just disappears and the whole thing collapses. That's not what happened with us. I think PlayStation did an incredible job. They managed to retain an awful lot of the people. Some of the interesting ones that were part of the deals, so that were in our company. One was Brendan Arib, who was the CEO of Oculus VR. So he basically left our company after the acquisition and went and built Oculus VR. So there's some pretty interesting folks were part of our team, and it's gone full circle in my new company. He's now invested into our new company. So it's kind of fun to see how that works. Like, people who invest in the game industry end up coming across, even though I've moved over now to e-commerce, and what the heck am I doing in e-commerce? I'm from the game business, but e-commerce, the thing is that we keep telling everyone how big the game industry, but e-commerce is $5.5 trillion, and when you get to, and that's in 2022, when you get a $5.5 trillion business, then that's an interesting space. And can we do anything in that space? Like, who are we to think we can, but why not, right? That's generally my attitude. Let's take a look and see what's going on here. And we found an opportunity, which was the idea of helping brands work with other brands, and to make that effortless. So if two brands install our software, now they can immediately sell each other's products. So, you've got a store that sells bicycles and I make helmets. Do you want to sell my helmets? And it's literally just a case of like a dating site saying yes. And suddenly, you see, in the past, you would have to buy, the bicycle store has to buy helmets and move them around and store them in a warehouse and touch them and insure them and return them when they don't sell and all of that all goes away. Now you have all the helmets and all the colors and all the sizes instantly. And so this seemed to me like, why doesn't this exist? This is, currently people are all buying their clicks from Google and Facebook, which is fine. But they're all buying, if you're all in the helmet business, you're all buying the same clicks. To some extent, if you look at all those brands together, we have over 30,000 brands using our technology now. And when you have all 30,000 together, there's about 350 million visitors a month. So if you can get your helmets into other stores' traffic, you get their traffic for free. And so that's a game changer if you're in the world of buying views. You just get their traffic for free forever. And then when your helmet gets added into someone's store, their average order size will go up. And that's actually one of the most important metrics for e-commerce is when someone comes to your site, how much do they spend? And if you can increase that number, that's a really good news for a brand. And so, yes, we've somehow gone from gaming to e-commerce, but I think it's because we're also coming at it from a slightly different vector. And you can imagine the data I look at. We have a guy who does really great 3D. So I look at the data in 3D. We have spinning globes and things like that. So you can see the transactions flying around the world, and it's awesome. And that's
man, I'm blown away. I'm waiting to hear if they're not already reaching out. I'll keep an eye on the press for when Google or Amazon taps you on the shoulder, because I could just see them drooling over what you guys are doing. And I mean, not just because it potentially disrupts some of their traditional business, but clearly, wow, this is the future for e-com.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I think it's important because there's two pieces. There's sales and there's attention. So another thing we do is work with influencers. Influencers are realizing if they want to level up, they need to start focusing on customers, not followers. So followers are a beautiful metric. How exciting. I've got lots of followers. Yeah, but how many customers do you have? And they're like, I don't have any customers. I just send all my clicks to other people. And you're like, so you have no customers, and that means you're getting affiliate fees. Why are you getting affiliate fees when you can keep a retailer fee? So if you sell the product, you're finding the customer and you're convincing them to buy the product, which makes you the retailer. But because you don't have a way to do that, you're now just giving away that retail sale. You're taking a small percentage in affiliate fee, and you don't have any customers. Now, every influencer worth billions, the Kim Kardashians and Rihanna's and people like that, they all have absolutely solved this problem of getting followers to turn into customers. And so you say, well, what percentage of influencers have worked this out and actually achieved it? And meaning that they have now got, huge amounts of customers. And I would say it's less than 1%. So I think, we're walking into the space going, there's less than 1% of these people have actually done this. So the opportunity space is vast. And we have the technology ready to go. So if they want to, if the influencer wants to work with a brand, just by both installing our software, now they instantly have their products. And that means that, to me, it's a bit of a land grab for the brands to get their products into an influencer store. Some of the influencers we have 20 plus million followers. And so what's crazy is that if you were to pay them to post about your product, it would cost a lot of money. But if you put your product in their store, every time they post and send traffic to their store, you get that traffic for free forever. And that's a pretty exciting thing. So there's two pieces to this. There's attention, and then there's just trying to get additional sales. But the attention piece, I think, is kind of funny, because you'll never meet a brand that's like, please, no more attention. Like, we're good on attention. It's insatiable. The desire for attention is what is created Facebook and Google and Twitter, is the controlling of attention. And so I think influencers are the value there is potentially huge. And that leads to a whole conversation which we could have about social commerce, which I think is going to change things too. But we're just trying to line them up and get them ready for that.
Yeah, wow. It's a brand new world and it's moving fast. It is hard to I think just as a business owner myself, it is hard to keep up with some of the way things are evolving, the way people transact, the way people think and make decisions. It is fascinating. David, I could talk to you about this all day, but obviously I know we've probably run out of time today, and you've, I imagine, got a lot of things to do. So um, I'd like to put you on the spot in a second, maybe ask you if there's one parting piece of wisdom, a tip, a bit of advice that you'd share with other business owners, perhaps who are on their journey. But before I do that, I mean, where's the best place for people to find out more information about you and certainly about your business, Caro?
Yeah, so Caro, the website is getcaro.com. So get, CARRO.com. If you know anyone with a Shopify store, please tell them. And if they email hello@getcaro.com and mention this podcast, we will take really good care of them. So make sure that they reach out to us so we know that. But yeah, that would be the main thing. And you'll find me on places like LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is D Perry, so DPERRY. There's about 1 million David Perrys for some crazy reason, and so you'll never find me that way. So just look for it. It's like cool. You need to /D Perry, you'll find me.
Yeah, awesome. And I notice you're on Twitter and everything else. So what we'll do is we'll grab your links. We'll throw them in the show notes there so people can get to you quickly. As we always say on the show, if you do reach out via LinkedIn or those other sources, maybe mention the podcast so David at least understands, where you're coming from. We're not robots here. So, David, thank you once again. Really appreciate your generosity. You've shared so many sort of insights, your story. I know people will get a lot of value from this. Before we leave, is there one parting piece of advice or a tip that you'd give to other business owners?
I got a couple, which is one really quick one is I always think that hiring someone to help is going to take too much work to bring them up to speed or whatever. So I'll just do it myself. That's a terrible strategy. So don't do that. I was the CEO and I didn't have a COO, and my board was like, "You need a COO," and I was like, we'll see. And then we finally hired one. Life changing, because they actually care about the stuff that you don't really give the bandwidth to. So when you get a building lease or a contract with somebody or whatever, they're all over it like a rash. And yet with me, I'll be like, oh, this is my kryptonite, right? Sitting in this stuff. And so hire people when you can to support you so that you can focus on the stuff you need to do. And then the second thing, which I talk about a lot, is with every new employee we hire, is we're allergic to people that point at hurdles. So that would be the other one to avoid like the plague. You've been in meetings, I guarantee it, with people that keep telling you why there's a problem and you can't move forward. And if only this problem wasn't there, but it's stopping us. And then you'll meet some people who somehow just get a lot of stuff done. And they're jumping hurdles continuously, and you find out later, like, wow, that was really hard. What, you got that done? And those people I call them 10Xers. They're about 10 times a normal hurdle pointer. So some of our employees will even say we're kicking the hurdles out of the way, which I like that. That's even cooler than jumping them, is just boot them out of the way. I got to get on with this. So what I'm saying is, if you have people that are like an anchor around you that make it really hard to make progress because there's just constantly a reason why you can't move forward, you gotta get rid of those people, and you gotta find people that are those 10Xers. It turns out you don't need many, you just need a few, but everything changes when you get to work with those people. Even your own attitude of what's possible and when, and it all changes. And so hunt those people down and get them on your team, and everything changes. You'll start moving incredibly fast. So that would probably be an important piece of advice.
Awesome. And awesome advice it is. Look for the game changers and look for the people that can push you as well. I think that's brilliant. David, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure chatting to you, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for inviting me.